So the album came out on Friday, as I mentioned on the show 2 Thursdays ago, and I was very excited for it. I marathoned the entire thing when I heard it. Uh, I think I mentioned thinking about getting like a vinyl, more of just for display, but a vinyl copy of the album. I have not done that. I've still planned to maybe at some point, but I just streamed it through YouTube. So just some general notes about the album. I first of all, I would say I enjoyed it overall. I did like the album. I thought it was pretty good. It's a thing where, and we'll get into this later, where when you listen to, I think, any album from a legacy group, maybe if that's the term you want to use, like the Rolling Stones, you kind of have to know that, especially if you're someone who's been into their music for a long time and is familiar with all the classics, it may not always live up to all your expectations. That's why it's just important to know what you're listening to. And I think it was a good album, partially because I felt it was kind of a traditional rock album, which is, of course, what the Rolling Stones do, rock, blues, that's what they're known for. I wouldn't expect them to do anything different from that. And I was happy about that. I was happy that you kind of could expect not exactly how all the songs would go, but just the kind of album you'd be listening to. Something that I'd say, I guess I'm disappointed in, but it's not necessarily a criticism. It's more just something I thought I would have maybe enjoyed more if it was different. Which is that I had spoken the last show about the featured artists that will be on the album besides just the Rolling Stones. Elton John, I believe, was one of them. Stevie Wonder, Lady Gaga. Stevie Wonder and Lady Gaga were on the Sweet Sounds of Heaven, the single that was released. But I still counted them as, other artists that would be appearing on the album. And those are just the ones I knew would, or expected would do vocal parts. Except for Stevie Wonder, since we already heard his part on Sweet Sounds of Heaven was not a vocal part, which I think most people could expect. But also on appearing on the album, as I mentioned, were not really a featured artist just because this was just the nature of when recording the album, but Charlie Watts, for the last few songs Charlie Watts would do with the Rolling Stones before his passing. And that was, of course, you would expect it would just be playing drums, that was his role with the Rolling Stones. And that I could be wrong on this only because I don't remember what songs. For the others, I could tell you what songs they were on. But Bill Wyman, bass player for the Rolling Stones in the beginning, played on I think it was just one song. It wasn't a few like some of the other artists. But for those two, you expect to only hear their instrumentation. I was a bit disappointed that unless I'm forgetting something, which I really doubt I am, that Paul and Elton did not have any vocal parts in the album. I was a bit disappointed by that. I hope they would. I mean, it's a thing where it's a thing where I understand that that's not the focal point, considering that I think the main draw of the album is mostly just that it's the first original Rolling Stones album in nearly 20 years. You want to hear the Rolling Stones. You want to hear Mick Jagger specifically and his vocals, and I understand that, but I just kind of hoped maybe I'll just say particularly Paul McCartney, since I think I've mentioned before I would consider him personally the greatest musician, just period. Not of a certain era, not of our lifetimes, just period, just the greatest musician. And I was hoping that he might have a vocal part on this. I did actually like his song a lot, though, the one he was on, and I'll get into that in a minute. It was the song, and I'll just list a few of the songs I liked the best. Bite My Head Off was one that was one of the names of the songs. I mentioned that on the last episode where I mentioned that was the one Paul was on, so I was particularly looking forward for that one. And Paul, unless I'm forgetting something, just does bass on that song. Or, well, I guess if I'm forgetting something, I just mean unless I'm remembering incorrectly. I don't think it's not like he was playing bass and then with his other hand playing guitar or something, but he was just playing bass for that song. But taking out any sort of personal bias just out of me, being a big fan, I thought that it was probably at least my personal favorite song. I feel like there was enough good songs, and that music is just kind of subjective enough that it'll be hard to say what's the best song, but that was just my personal favorite. I really enjoyed that one. I think out of all of them, I was thinking about it, I think it had the most single potential out of all of them. I think I would have liked if that was the lead single of the album personally. And at first I was kind of wondering why it wasn't when listening to it. I was like, it was a really catchy song. It's one I've listened to the most since the album came out. And then I heard, and then it's something where, it's not something you should be surprised by. It's not a controversial thing anymore. There was quite a bit of throwing around of the F word later on in the song. Maybe it was only once in the chorus. I could be wrong, but and I realized, oh well, that kind of makes sense. I mean, I know I know songs aren't exactly like movies where, you know, movies are aimed for like a PG-13 audience because kids can go by themselves. Parents don't have as much a problem taking their kid to a PG-13 movie as an R-rated movie. I know songs don't have letter ratings like that, but I kind of realized, I feel like the most marketable songs probably are the ones that anyone could listen to. So I feel like, well, first of all, there aren't going to be a lot of kids listening to the Rolling Stones, period, and that's just, that's okay. But that's something where I feel like maybe people are more comfortable if they play the songs that don't have any swear words in it. But it was a good song though. I assume everyone listening is an adult, so we can all listen to it and not have a problem with it. But I thought that one was probably the best one on the album. And then there was another one I really enjoyed as well, which was "Driving Me Too Hard" was the name of it. And I'll double check actually, just because the song did have I have it written down somewhere, but the songs had so many different featured artists on the song, as I already mentioned, and that I don't think, unless I am forgetting something, that one had anyone. And that's the thing where I'll forget because they didn't directly sing in the songs, but I thought that would kind of make it a bit easier to tell if obviously. But when I'm double checking, from what I can tell, unless I'm forgetting something, that song was one that was just the Stones. It wasn't any sort of Elton John or Paul McCartney or anything like that. That one I liked a lot. I feel like it was a bit slower. Bite My Head Off was a very fast song. Like I said, it was a very traditional rock song. And I liked it partially because, and this could just be me wanting to compare it to other songs, but it had a real Tumble and Dice feel, I felt, to it. It kind of reminded me of that song, especially in the beginning. I feel like if you're a big fan of the Rolling Stones, listen to the beginning and you'll know what I'm talking about. And, that's never a bad thing, to get the feel of one of those classic songs. So I thought that was good, really good. And so, really, I guess one of my takeaway from saying those are the two songs, because there were other great songs, obviously, but those are the two that really stood out as, those are my favorite songs on the album. And I was thinking about it, and, nothing against Angry and Sweet Sounds of Heaven were the two they released prior to the album as singles. I mean, no disrespect to those songs, but I honestly thought, if we could live in a world where, no one had a problem, there wouldn't be one person who complains about swearing in music, or just what would the term be, inappropriate themes in music. I thought Bite My Head Off and Driving Me Too Hard would have been, I would have really liked if those two were the lead singles for the album, if those came out first. And maybe partially it is because those are the songs that are some of the best. They want to save them for the album. And I know the other reason probably why the two songs that were chosen that were played as singles were, and this is, coming from someone, I don't know what I'm talking about in terms of, I'm not in the music industry. I don't know. I can't call Mick Jagger and ask him why they chose the songs they did. But I think those two Angry, first of all, as I mentioned in the first discussion on the album, sounded the most, I guess I'd say, familiar Rolling Stones territory. It's nothing that anyone who's listening to it, you wouldn't be surprised. If you know a new Rolling Stones song has came out, you wouldn't be surprised listening to that. It's not something that would take it in any sort of massively different direction. And then Sweet Sounds of Heaven was the one with two featured artists on it. One of them, the only one that had a vocal part from either of them. And it was probably the most ballad-ish song, if that's what you'd like to call it. It was definitely the longest on the album, and it was a good song as well. I think I mentioned I liked that one better. Although, I mean, to be honest, and this isn't a critique, but it's nothing where, I think this is a good description of the album in general. It's nothing where it takes the Rolling Stones and as you know them and goes a different direction with it, and that's fine. That's actually, I think for when there comes a certain period of time where a band doesn't release a new album in so long, at least a new original album, it's something where, if anything, I think, at least for me personally, you kind of want what's familiar. You want something that you already know that you like, and you want a continuation of that. So I was happy about that. I was thinking, would it have been interesting maybe if they tried to do something really different with the album? Maybe, but I was happy with the fact that, it sounded like a Rolling Stones album, And I do plan to get the vinyl at some point, I'm sure. Maybe around Christmas or something. I don't know. I do. I would have a way of playing it, but I mostly just want it for display, because I just think it was a very nice cover. Hackney Diamonds had a very nice cover to it. So that's my main points about the album. And I guess we will. I'm not completely finished with the discussion yet, but looking at the time, we will have enough time to go to play a few more songs before we close out. But I guess the main point I think I'd just like to make with it is, and I think this goes for, as I said, any band that is this legacy band that so many people are familiar with and so many people might have an opinion on that and have done so much for music in general. When you shouldn't go into an album like this expecting it's going to completely change the music industry or do something radically different with the Rolling Stones or their image or their music that you wouldn't expect going in. But I think if it's just an album where if you're kind of looking for what you are in an album like me, you'll enjoy. I think anyone who is a fan of the Rolling Stones, as long as if they're not expecting that, would enjoy it. And I have heard some people who didn't like it, at least online. I mean, the majority of the response I've seen, especially from music critics and fans, has been very positive. Actually, it was more positive than A Bigger Bang, their last original album, from what I can tell. And of course, music criticism in the music industry, that was 2005 when that came out. It's changed a lot since then, but it had a more positive reception to my mind than that one. So I thought it was nice that a lot of people are enjoying it. And those who aren't, that's fine as well. I mean, I think it's something where, and I don't mean to speak of all the people who didn't like it as they all looked at it from the same perspective, but I would imagine that people who look at the album, kind of knowing what you'll get from the typical Rolling Stones fare and being a fan of the Rolling Stones and their music, would enjoy it. I think they would get something out of it. But of course, I can't speak for every person. There's going to be some people who wouldn't like it, and that's fine. That's their opinion. But I personally thought it was a good album. So there's my opinion on it. Of course, I'll have to listen to it probably at least one more time to cement my feelings on it. Probably not all at once. I have listened to quite a few songs of it again, but at some point, I'll listen to the album again and just that would cement my feelings on it. That's another reason why I couldn't consider this a full-on review. It's only been about 6 days since I listened to it, so it's something where you kind of need some time to really think about what how to articulate your thoughts on it. So, but I enjoyed it. I would definitely recommend people, if you're a fan of rock, which I mean, I'm sure you can assume I am by listening to the program. I think you would enjoy it. I would recommend it. So that's my opinion, basically. Again, not really a review, just some general thoughts, since I figured it would be best to follow up. I thought more, even though I put the speaker thing first, I thought that was more important to follow up on, really, to kind of, since I spoke about it and my anticipation for it 2 weeks ago. So just thought it'd be good to bring that to a close.